Want to record, please? There we go.
Okay, let me just hit got it. And I got it. So I really want to acknowledge Joan because um, not only for your beautiful voice, but just the passion in your voice and in everything you do for our congregation, most of which is maybe now entirely voluntary. So we are just so fortunate to have you, to have your intellect, to have your beautiful voice, and to have your passionate support. So that is my short uh, introduction for a person
Thank
that I
you.
know has a long professional bio.
Oh, thank you, Steve. That's very, very kind of you. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening. The Alaskan beauty of the Iditarod Trail reminds Pete Ripmaster why he loves the challenge of the wilderness as he thinks back to how life began and his trials and tribulations that he has faced before rekindling his true love of the great outdoors. Pete always felt like an outsider and found solace in alcohol and drug use. Masking his depression only made it more evident, and something had to change. That change finally came when Pete entered and ultimately won the 2018 Iditarod Trail Invitational in Alaska. It was a long journey finding himself. He then chronicled it in the book The Long Way Home, which he'll talk about, and it inspires those who are setting goals, following dreams, no matter how impossible they may seem. So it is my pleasure to introduce Pete and also interview Pete. So that this will not strictly be a talk, it will be an interactive talk. So
I
I'll
love it.
begin with the most basic of questions, Pete, which
Sure.
is tell us about your childhood. Where are you from? What's your favorite color? Anything you want to
Sure.
share in
Okay,
those
awesome.
early time.
Thank you for that nice introduction, by the way. That is very nice. Very, very, very nice. Thank you. I
Thanks.
appreciate that. I was a Michigan boy. I was born and raised in Michigan. I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But my dad and grandpa played football at Michigan State. So it was this weird interaction within our family, cut right down the middle as far as go blue or Michigan State. And so I was pretty much born with a ball in my hand. I was I love sports, like I just catching my dad's passes all the time in the backyard. So it's very, I like to think of myself as the last generation that the parents had to yell at us to come inside to eat. Right. If you understand what I mean. I mean, we would be like, Mom, we'll be in a minute. It's tie score. We're almost done. And she'd come back out a half hour later and yell the same thing. So I very much remember being outside a lot, running around, chasing things. Just I felt more comfortable outside than I did inside in this life right from the beginning. Uh, I would say one other thing I would say about my childhood, what that shaped a lot of me, not a particularly fun time, but I was bullied very bad in fifth grade, like very bad to the point where I wanted to pretty much take my life, and had to struggle through a really, really, really tough year that I don't think anyone should have to struggle through. So that shaped a lot of how I looked at life, how I trusted people, my circles. It kind of and still does in a lot of ways. Fortunately and unfortunately.
And who was your childhood hero? Who got you through those years?
I would say that a childhood hero. It's very cool. I have some pretty cool family history. Amelia Earhart is in my family tree,
Darn
and
it, that
so
was one of my questions, Pete.
yes. Oh, I screwed you up. I'm
It's
sorry, but
okay.
I'm sorry, but yes,
This is very cool. It's very
that
cool.
was
Go ahead.
so I knew the kind of bloodlines that were in the family. People that were very adventurous and taking big risks, and I like to think of myself as kind of carrying that torch in a lot of ways in my adult life. But yeah, that was someone I looked up to. But I have to say, because of the bullying, I was very much into books. That was my escape. And so I was the boy reading Jack London stories, anything about the Wild West and about the North and about the Klondike and about, just a different generation of people that I felt more connected to in my reading. So I would say that was shaped a lot in my life as well.
What was your first like grown-up job?
Oh, opening and closing pools. That was in my.
So it had to be outdoors for you.
It
Everything
had
had to be outdoors.
it was. And it's funny, later in life I became a teacher, and although I loved the children and teaching, the four walls were just daily, closing in on me. I just have such a wild spirit that, I feel so much more connected and so much more at ease when I'm outside. I don't know. It's just the way I was born, I guess.
It's all good. Do you live somewhere that enables you to enjoy the outdoors?
I do.
We don't even know where you are.
I live in Asheville, North Carolina,
Oh,
and very, very pretty spot, and very, all the outdoor activities that you would want to get into, you can get into here. And I have friends that are just incredible mountain athletes, and we chase each other around the mountains in one form or the other very regularly. So yes,
beautiful.
I get to step out the door and get out in it.
You get your outdoor entertainment every day. So, do you have like a daily routine? Do you exercise? Do you meditate? None of
No,
that?
I would say I love life. I have a lot of passions. I'm a runner. I would say that's what most people would see me as someone that runs long distances and has big adventures. But I love 15 different things to do in life. So, I might wake up one day and just say, I don't feel like running today. And I've learned to not beat myself up about that. I learned to listen to my body and just and give myself grace in that way, and not be so rigid with training plans and lifestyles. And so, some people are amazed that, I'll be out, having a beer and eating pizza, a couple, and just happy as can be, and so I'm not like this dedicated, lean and mean, always in shape athlete. I kind of ride the wave of like a lot of people do.
I love that. You're a regular person.
Yeah,
Thank you very
absolutely.
much.
And then
Thank you
some.
very much for that.
And
So
then
you
some.
mentioned running, and can you talk to us about taking up running? I read that it was to honor your mother's memory. Can you talk to us about that?
That's exactly right. And thank you for doing the research. That
I
always
do my
lends well
research,
to
dude.
good
I
interviews.
do my
Yeah,
research.
absolutely. Yeah, I lost my mom to cancer in 2000, and I was a mess after that. I didn't know quite what to do, and ultimately, I moved to Alaska to kind of find myself again after losing her. Tried my hand at running sled dogs up in Alaska. I worked for some Iditarod mushers, and I was going to follow that Balto and that Jack London dream and get my way to the finish of the Iditarod. That was just what I wanted to do with my life. And then I just found that running dogs was just way more work than I would ever imagine it to be. And the dog lot that I worked in had 250 dogs that you had, and I had about I don't know, 70 dogs that I would take care of daily. And so, and it just was like, I can't, at the time I could barely take care of myself, let alone all these beating hearts and just all the, each one has their own issues as far as their foot care. And, one's in heat and one's trying to, and it's just, it was too much for me. And so I kind of gave up my Iditarod dream, moved back down to what they call the lower 48 and started and became a teacher. And then one day, oh, this is a fun story. One day,
We love fun stories.
yes, one day after I had been teaching for a couple of years, I turned to my grandmother came to visit. My mom's mom came to visit us, and my sister came to visit us. And me and my wife were taking those two back to the airport. And we took them and we dropped them off. And then I turned to my wife after we started driving away and I said, oh, by the way, I'm going to run a marathon today. And she goes, what are you talking about? What in the world are you even talking about? And I hadn't said a word about it. I hadn't been running. I had not been training. I just in my mind knew that I wanted that challenge. And that was the day it was going to happen. So I told her to drop me off pretty much on the side of the road on the Blue Ridge Parkway because they had mile markers. And I thought that might be a good, indication.
Let's see how many miles I can log.
And so I ran my first marathon that day. And just, my body didn't know what I had just put it through. I mean, it was 0 to 60. And I do not recommend that for anybody, but it was, of course, the way that I went at it. And then I was laying on my back after running that first marathon, and I was in chills, and then I'd be hot, and my body didn't know what was in and my wife looked down at me and said, well, I'm really worried about you. And I was just like, forget about that. That was the coolest thing I've ever done
Oh
in
my
my life.
gosh.
And I knew then that long distances, and I've come to find out the reason I love it so much is because it's very physical, right? The physical act of running, but it's very mental as well. And you have to have a strong mind to run
Like
long
mind over
distances.
matter kind of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I'm big into that. I'm a big believer that the mind is the most important part of the equation. And so
I can imagine.
now I found something that I can kind of gnaw at and start. And so I decided to run 50 marathons in 50 states. And I ran 50 marathons in 50 states from 2008 to 2013 and raised $62,000 for cancer research in my
Wow.
mom's name in that project.
That's amazing.
So that's what got me into running.
So every race that you ran, you got sponsors, like you would say,
No,
I'm
it was
coming to
great.
Ohio.
No, it was the best because I've had a lot of people ask me, say, hey, I want to raise money for, and everyone that wants to raise money always is saying, oh, I'm just going to ask some big companies, because they have so much money. There's just this misunderstanding of how it works as far as how hard it is to get people to open up and do that. So I took the total different approach, and I said, I'm just going to open it up to anyone that can donate. And if they donate $5, I'm going to treat it as much as someone donating 5,000, a big company. And I just kind of said, I'm not also going to be the type that's going to bother people and, tell them what I'm doing every second and ask them to donate. I'm going to say, this is what I'm doing. I'd like for you to follow. I'd like for you to donate when you can. But after that, I'm just going to do my thing. And family members and people that love my mom were the ones that were donating all the time. And so it was nothing more than $100 or $200 at a time. It was all $10, $25, but tons of people doing it. And so I'm a firm believer in just, small, passion, like grassroots fundraising, because I think that's the way to go in a lot of cases.
It makes sense, and that's so admirable. Did you find when you ran those 50 different races in 50 states, were like with any affinity sport, there's sort of the ugly underbelly, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
What did you find anything that was sort of like eyebrow raising in your experience?
No, not. I wasn't when I was running marathons. I was not in the upper echelon of running marathons.
So nobody would accidentally trip you or anything like that.
No, and I really found the running community really, really encouraging. I was a proud member of it, but I didn't necessarily love the races. And what started me running longer races than marathons and running much longer than that was I felt the need to kind of see how far I could go with running rather than seeing how fast I could run. That kind of lost its mojo with me. I just kind of, I qualified for Boston when I was running marathons, and I ran the Boston Marathon, and then I was like, well, that was cool, but it didn't have any real effect on me. And I don't love crowds, as you can imagine, with my childhood and things. I don't feel comfortable around big crowds and loud noises and just constant. And so it was funny because in that 50 state marathon project, you would see the first number of marathons were like Chicago Marathon, Detroit Marathon, all these big marathons. And then by the end, it was Timbuktu, Iowa.
Right.
I mean, just as small as I could find races, because I just like the kind of ma and pa type aspect of running.
I love that.
Yeah.
So speaking of the Iditarod, I have to confess that I thought the Iditarod was just with dogs, okay?
You would be with 99.9% of the population.
I do believe even your agent admitted to me, and I'm saying it's now being recorded, she was like,
Yes.
That's what I thought when I talked to Pete.
Absolutely.
That's all there is, are dog sleds, and you race along and you win. So at some point, I got it in my head that this is an Iditarod foot race. So
100%.
It is all the heel toe express for you to do the 1,000 miles. Is that right?
Ultimately, that was what it was. But I was like you, and even when I lived up in Alaska and ran sled dogs, I didn't even know that there was a different race on the Iditarod Trail. So it was later on, even almost after all my marathons, that I read an article about the Iditarod Trail Invitational, and it said, this is a race where it's human powered. You have to either run on foot and haul a sled behind you, or you bike with a fat tire bike with all your gear on the bike, or you cross country ski pulling a sled behind you. And
Which did you?
I was on foot. I'm an ultra runner, so I ran it. So I did the entire, so ultimately, I started in 2014 with the 350-mile short course
Okay.
on the Iditarod Trail. And I did that for numerous years. And then I failed a couple times trying to get to Nome because of, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but some really scary moments on the trail that made me quit numerous years. And then in 2018, I was able to run 1,000 miles in 26 and a half days in the middle of winter in Alaska. It ended up being 38 miles a day for 26 and a half days straight. And those numbers are, kind of, it's hard but here's the numbers I like to say, and that would resonate most with people is when I started the race, I was 210 pounds. When I finished the race, I was 169 pounds. So
Wow.
I gave everything I had to finish this race, and I ran that race 5 straight years. Ultimately, my first year I was last place. I got
Oh my
12th
gosh.
place out of 12 runners, and it was humbled as could be out there in the wilderness of Alaska by myself. And then
You were not
ultimately,
around anybody else. There was
no,
nobody
I was in
in
last
sight.
place, so I was always by myself the whole entire time. I mean, after 5 miles into that 350 miles, my first year, I was with people. Then I got lost 25 miles. I went off course the first day. Got completely lost, didn't know how to use the fancy GPS that I had in my, I mean, I have some language I could use, but it was not a good representation. But I had to learn everything. Necessarily, I needed to put myself in this situation to learn how to then take care of myself and learn how to take care of navigation, learn how to take care of how much I'm bringing with. My sled was 92 pounds the first year I did the race. So it's like hauling a small person behind you,
And
pretty
then you
much.
had to camp each night, like in the wilderness under
Yes,
the stars.
about half the time you're out in the wilderness and you're in a bivvy. You're in a sleeping bag in a bivvy, and you have to sleep outside. Sometimes it can be 50 below. You have to find your way to sleep. Other times you get to shelter cabins, and other times you get into native communities, and they open up the schools for you. And sometimes the teachers let you stay in their classrooms, and other times people bring you into their house. They see you coming into their town, and they want, they wonder about you, and they talk to you, and you tell them what you're doing, and they say, well, come inside, I'm going to feed you, and can we do your
Oh,
laundry? And I mean, just it's unbelievable compassion I saw on the trail.
that's a
So
very amazing experience. Is there an entry fee for this? And is there a prize money package? Like, how does that
I
work?
love that it costs, I think, in the neighborhood of about $1,500 or so to enter the race. I mean, that's so they can kind of give a bunch of support for those checkpoints, and they can
Medical?
the medical. They have, snowmobile teams that can, pretty much be out there to take care if something happens. But please understand that most of the time you're on your own, and if something happens, you're in the middle of nowhere by yourself. I have to say that's first and foremost,
Wow.
that's what I dealt with.
And so if you win, or is it like
Oh yeah,
first through
so when
third?
I won, so here we go. Okay, I usually get this after I give talks. I usually get questions after I give talks, and the first one is, "What'd you win?" Well, I have to tell people that the Iditarod musher that same year, who I had a lot of interactions with on the trail, he said he won $70,000 and like a $60,000 new Dodge truck because they're the big sponsor. And then more or less, I like to say that he walks off the trail and walks into multiple sponsorships, of dog food companies and truck
Yeah,
companies that
also,
want him
yeah.
to represent them. What did I get? I got a patch for my jacket that I could sew onto my jacket. I got a finisher t-shirt, and I got a coffee mug that said champion 2018 Iditarod Trail Invitational champion. And I still have the mug. I could probably have one of my daughters grab it. But it's that, and that's that. And you know what?
How is that possible? Why is
Because
there
you know
such
what?
a disparity?
Because it's a throwback adventure. It was the people that are doing this type of thing are not trying to win money. They're not trying. They are trying. You know, it's a.
Are the mushers there to win money? Like
Well, first you have to understand you hadn't heard of this race before, so there's no major sponsors. No one really cares. You know, it's a very obscure race. I've tried to bring a lot of light to it. I've done a lot of interviews and talked about it as much as possible. But especially when I was doing it, you couldn't even hardly look online and find out what to bring with you. I mean, it was obscure as it could be. Ultimately, I think it will get to that point where there is prize money, and you know, because the race, even since I've stopped, it's grown and grown and grown and grown, and I'm happy for that. But when I was doing it, I was literally pretty much out there trying to find myself. Like, I mean, I did over 2,500 miles on the Iditarod Trail on foot, on my 2 feet.
So,
and it was more or
it's
less
$1,500 each year, each time you entered.
Sure,
plus
but that's, you know,
and all your supplies, right? You had to buy all of that.
And the you know, and the plane ticket and the hotel room and the transportation. To, you know, I mean, it's a thing. It's a tough thing to get into, and then once you're in there, it's tough to make happen. And then you have to take off the time from work, or you know, I mean, you have to. You're
losing money there too.
I was gone for almost a month and a week when I went in 2018 for the Iditarod Trail Invitational, I should say.
So were you ever scared out there?
There were scary times. There were times I felt threatened. My life felt threatened, you know,
by
as far as
creatures or by
weather.
Oh.
By weather.
So you're sitting there in your like sleeping bag
and I'm shivering cold because it's so cold.
I'm feeling it, man. I'm feeling it right now.
You literally cannot. It's the stupidest thing in the world to stop and do that because you're just sitting there shivering. The only way I found in weather like that you can stay warm is to move, is to hike. That you warm yourself as much as you need to when you're hiking. But the second you stop, you feel that you got sweat on you, that's frozen. You know, you stop, you got to put on a huge overcoat right away because you feel how cold it is when you stop moving. So there were nights when I had to literally hike from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. and not stop because I couldn't stop because weather. And
that sounds so counterintuitive to resting your body, though.
But if you're sitting there shivering, you're not going to sleep, right?
And you're probably burning a lot of energy that way.
And you're burning energy. So, you know, you have all these strikes against you. Yes, you'd love to just sleep, but you're fighting, you know, wind is whipping through your sleeping bag, you know, and and I've heard wolves in those situations. You know, I've heard the call, you know, the wild howls of wolves. And I mean, it's madness. It can be. And then there can be the most serene, beautiful northern lights, beautiful, you know, calm days, beautiful rivers, beautiful moose and beautiful wolverines and beautiful, you know, all kinds of animals. And, you know, you can, but it's just like, you know, it's the extreme.
And you never know did you have like a weather app so you knew what to expect?
No, not
so
at
every
all.
minute was a surprise.
You know, with storms, you could never predict what the weather is going to be in Alaska for that period of time. You know, because the storm would come in out of nowhere, and you couldn't see your hand in front of you. You know,
wow.
and now all of a sudden the route finding is a big issue because
I don't know about anybody else.
You know, you don't know if you're on the right trail, and so it's
it's mind-boggling. You know.
I agree. I agree completely.
So did failure scare you? Were you like, you know, this is my 5th time, my 3rd time, my whatever? You were just like, I'm doing this until I win? Or what, you know, what was your thing?
No, winning had nothing to do with it. I got lucky by winning the race in 2018. Just people quit. One person quit that is like Elvis Presley of our sport, right? Like
Why did Elvis quit?
Because he had done that race to Nome 9 times. on foot. And he got to a point where he just wasn't feeling it. He could have gone on, but you just have to, I quit certain times because your mental checks out and you don't want to be there. You know what's in front of you. He knows exactly what's around all the turns. And he just got to a point where, and I was like a day behind him. I mean, so I was nowhere close to him. If he would have stayed on the trail, he would have won another year. But, I like to say, someone had a plan for me and an opportunity was just kind of handed to me. And there's not that many of us idiots out there to start with.
Yeah, that's the part I'm trying to get my head around, is like the big question of why does one do that? But you know what? That applies to a lot of choices we make.
Well, and understand that goal of mine was to get to know him. And I tried it with the dogs, but I found the dogs, weren't going to be the ticket for me. Now, all of a sudden, I have this way I can do it by myself. I've become an ultra runner. I have the mindset that I can pretty much do anything I put my mind to. And so it was my passion. It was my absolutely something that I'll hang my hat on, when I'm not around anymore. That will be something that speaks to who I was.
It's your legacy.
Perseverance and legacy. And I like to think back to Amelia Earhart, making one for herself, and so
yeah.
And
it's in your blood, dude. It's in your blood. So was there any, I mean, you guys were far apart.
Right.
Was there any politics, or was there camaraderie if you did run into each other? Or at the end, did you all wait for each other, like in high five? Like, how much did you interface ever?
You're asking awesome questions, by the way. This is very enjoyable. Thank you so much. I mean, I've been
my pleasure.
Terrible ones before.
Really?
Where I get done with the whole interview and they're like, "So what was your lead dog's name?" I'm like,
well,
you're doing
it's my pleasure,
job.
And I thank you for that. I do.
But we did have there was camaraderie, and there was definitely times when you're moving with people. But I'm the type of person, I'm kind of, it's hard to get along well with me. You get out there, you get really burned out because you're hungry, you're tired, you're sleep deprived, you're literally hallucinating. I mean, there were times when I was full on hallucinating out there on the Iditarod Trail. I had almost lost touch with reality because of all the sleep deprivation, night after night after night, day after day after day, pushing. And so that's a tough, place to find yourself, having nice conversations.
It's hard to be friendly when you're feeling like that.
Exactly. And so ultimately, the one that I finished, that finished behind me, we had our moments of getting along and we had our moments of not getting along. I'll put it that way. And so it got a little heated some certain times, but just because of, like I said, it's just the fire's burning real strong, and it's hard to be, anything other than trying to take care of yourself out there.
No, I get it. That makes sense. You're not going to feel like singing Kumbaya every day with these people. Was it all men, by the way?
No, there's been some phenomenal females that have done this race and finished to Nome. I mean, it's probably 2 or 3, 4 maybe, and since 1999, women have gone all the way to Nome, but there's been a lot that have gone the 350-mile route. And I'm telling you, I have so much respect for them out there on the trail. I mean, as a 6 foot, 200-pound dude who's, doesn't care much about what you will kind of go toe to toe with people. I could not imagine being a petite girl walking through some of these situations that I had to walk through, that were touch and go. And I have so much respect for those women that go out there. And there were times I worried a little bit about them, because you see a lot out there. You see a lot of people flying around on snow machines. A lot of people that aren't really looking out for the best things out in the wilderness, and it can be an interesting place. I'll put it that way.
And do you know? I don't know. I'm not going to quote you as the historian of the foot race Iditarod, but do you know who might have been the oldest competitor?
I think the one that had done it
the Elvis guy.
Times. Yeah, Elvis Presley is
how old was he?
I think he now is maybe. I think he's probably 60, maybe. Yeah, I think he's probably around 60 years old, maybe 61, something like that.
Okay.
But he is like, he is like just
a brick wall guy. Of a person. Yeah.
You could walk by him he could be in this room right now, and we would look at all of us and not think, that we have this type of athlete within our realm, because Tim is so unassuming. He's a lawyer from Pennsylvania, and you could walk by him and just go, yeah, just a dude. But he's got this toughness.
He's not like a mountain man initially.
No, I mean, he goes, he's got the courtroom and everything, so it's like, and that's another cool thing is I'll mention that most people that do this race, very interesting people. You would think, a lot of diversity as far as what people are into, but very, very smart people, very calculated people, very opinionated people. It's wild. Cool. It's very wild.
So this would be a good point to perhaps read an excerpt from your book so we could get like more of the flavor of the experience.
Sure. Sounds good. In fact, I have, let's see here. Yes, I have one. I have one for you. Okay. You put me on the spot to find a couple of these, and I
often do that to people, but you're surviving. Good job.
Yeah, there you go. This was on the Iditarod Trail. So just to give you background, and I'm talking about the stops and when you do have to stop. And it says, there were a couple of really nice stops along the way. They even allowed racers to pre-order meals and rent a private room for the right price. That was true luxury after traveling for days on end in brutal weather. Some had heaters, a bed off the floor, and a shower. I would walk out of one of those checkpoints feeling like a new person, having that uninterrupted time to take care of any health issues like chafing or blisters, sleeping a full 6 or 7 hours, and feeling clean had a way of improving even the worst mood. It was the mental reset that I needed. However, those places were few and far between. Most were primitive at best.
Wow. It does make us feel very lucky to slide into our comfortable beds this evening.
Me too. Me too.
So, I also read about a project called Owl Run Hundreds. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes. So when I found out, when I got back from the Iditarod and finished and won the race, I said, I'm done with that race. I've done all I can do. I've given everything I can to that race. But I was thinking a lot, like, what do I do now? I think maybe 42 at the time or 41 or 42 when I finished the Iditarod and had already run the marathons. And so I was thinking, shoot, I need something. I need some framework to work within. And so I did some research, and I found that there were 1,500 people in our country, in our awesome country, that have run a marathon in all 50 states. So 1,500 people that have run a marathon in all 50 states. And so I looked into it, since I run longer than marathons. I looked how many people have run a 100-mile race or run in all 50 states. And I did that research, and there were 0. I found that there were absolutely no one had ever done it before. And so I thought, ding, 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 ding. Yeah. And I already had, and so, and here's a cool part of the story. My first year on the Iditarod Trail, and when I was in last place on my own in the wilderness, a snowy owl came out of nowhere to visit me. And it was one of the most spiritual moments of my entire life, because I'm a very spiritual person. And I honestly thought it was my first reaction was, I was like, Mom, you're coming to check on me out here. How cool. Like, I felt some very deep spiritual connection with this.
Could very well have been your mom. Yeah.
No doubt. And so, that I just kind of put that in the back of my mind for a long time. And then when I found that there were 0 people that had run 100-mile races in all 50 states, I thought, well, just like I raised money for cancer research by running the marathons for my mom, now my interest is ornithology, and I love studying about these owls. So I found this Owl Research Institute, which is a small nonprofit in Charlo, Montana, and they do incredible work with owls. And I started donating to them. And then when I found that there were 0 people that had done hundreds in all 50 states, I go, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and become the first person that runs a 100-mile run in all 50 states. And I'm going to try and raise $50,000 for the Owl Research Institute. And so I'm 18 states into the project right now.
Oh my God.
State 19 will be next weekend in Knoxville, Tennessee. and I've raised close to $25,000 for the nonprofit already.
After
so
18
far.
races, so
After
you'll
18
probably
races.
exceed your.
I think it's going to go way past it, but I will never be the type of person that will like just up the goal constantly.
Yeah.
My goal is $50,000. If I get 5 times that, it's incredible. If I don't get it, it's incredible. You know, obviously, I'm in
What
for
a
the long
cool
ride.
idea. That's amazing, Pete.
It's
So
been
have
so
you done
cool.
Maryland yet? Have you been in
No,
there?
I have. No, I have not.
You have a plan? Where are you going to run in
No, not
Maryland?
at all.
You should
Not
run
at
by
all.
us and we'll wave and
I
throw
will do
money
it.
at you.
Let's put it together. I will
We
come
will.
on there. I
We'll
will
do it
and
offline and we will
have-
make it happen and we will come wave at you. You'll
I
run
have
right
not
by
had,
us.
you know, I have a lot of people that reach out and they say, we want you to come and run this race or come do this. And all it takes is the first idea that someone has is you should. So you got it with Maryland.
All right. We're
I'm
all witnesses,
in.
you guys. Everybody here.
And
We're going to
trust
make
me,
him run right by us.
I don't necessarily need a race. I run a lot of my 100-milers just mapping
Yeah,
out.
like just run
just
around.
Homemade. I call them homemade hundreds. Thanks, COVID. But
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we will take this offline and then we will keep
got
you,
it.
everybody watching, apprised of the situation. But
Heck
I
yeah.
assure you that is happening.
Heck
Okay.
yeah.
So now
That's exciting. I have to take a moment to just take that in. Thank
I
you.
know, it's
That'll
cool.
be a
This
lot of
is-
fun. Yeah.
yeah, I'm totally there.
Great.
So I'm moving away from the book, but I wanted to remind you all about the book called The Long Way Home, and the subtitle is How I Won the 1,000-Mile Iditarod Foot Race with Persistence, Patience, and Passion. It's available on Amazon.
There you go. Thank you. The voice especially.
I know, right? And I did check it out on Amazon, and it's like on sale, like it's
Yes.
discounted right now. So
Definitely.
take a look, and it's free on Audible if you want to listen to his book, and you get a trial on Audible, and you can listen to it for free.
Wonderful.
So there are a couple ways that you can learn more about Pete. So still questions. Keep an eye on the time. So you speak on several topics. I know this because you speak everywhere. I've read that you speak on mindfulness and perseverance and purpose. How would you apply your thoughts and philosophies for someone over 65?
Oh, just making your own Iditarod. And, you know, every time I get done with the talk, I ask the crowd, you know, and I share my story and I share my passion. And then I say, what is your Iditarod? And, you know, and of course, please understand, and I always say this, I'm not asking you to go run a marathon or go run in Alaska. But you probably, when you start thinking about this, there's something that comes to your mind about what your Iditarod is. And a lot of that has to do with what you wanted to do when you were young, right? And so I like to remind people, what was that, right? I'd love for them to look in the mirror, because we get caught up so much in life and just trying to get by. And oh well, I lost, you know, I missed the boat, you know, because I'm over 60 or I'm 65. I have seen people that are older than that do the most incredible things in my realm all the time, to where it's not uncommon. You know, I will run ultra marathons and I will get passed by people that are twice my age, you know, that just have this grit and perseverance. And again, I'm not saying go out and run, but maybe it's starting to walk around the block, or maybe it's doing that local hiking trail that you told yourself you wanted to do, or maybe it's that first 10 pounds that you wanted to lose. But you know, everyone's looking for a quick fix. You need to look in the mirror, everybody. And I'm speaking to myself as well, but you need to be that tough person that's inside and going, I know what I need to do and I know what it takes to do that, but do I have what it takes? And so,
right. And I guess it could be a mental goal as well as a physical goal.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, or you said go back
to
to your childhood. You know, I saw Steve looking at Kay and I heard him say, you know what? When I was younger, I wanted that Corvette. I'm going to buy it tomorrow. And then I saw Kay go, no, you're not. That's what I saw them say. But it was just a guess on my part. I'm not sure that's what happened, but I feel like you might have inspired him. So now we're kind of going into a little more out there questions. So
Sure, bring it
buckle
on.
up. So if you had to switch lives with someone, who would it be and why?
Oh boy, if I had to switch lives, I would say an astronaut. I would say like a really successful astronaut that gets to kind of pick his missions
That's
look
the
at
ultimate outdoors, I would say.
there you go. You know, that looking, having that perspective of looking back on Earth, you know, and seeing that little blue ball, and that perspective,
That
I
would
think
be
would
cool.
be pretty darn cool.
I
And
think it
so
would
I
be
think
cool.
that would be my answer.
So, do you ever get bored?
Yes, yes, I do. And but to me, usually I'm inside. All it takes for me to,
Oh,
right?
that's your trigger where
That's my absolute trigger.
you're like uncomfortable,
If I'm
literally
bored, I'm like
inside.
there's almost like an internal thing that's like
Right? Alert,
like
alert.
get outside. And my wife will tell you, my wife is a pro at being like, Pete, I honestly think you need to go for a run. I think you need to get out there and go for a long run. And I get what
Yeah.
it means, and I know myself, you know, and so it's yes, definitely.
Okay, these questions, I pulled these off the internet and I'm having fun. I hope you are too. Ready?
I bring it on.
What is the last dream you remember having before waking up this morning? Everybody think about that.
Okay, and this is a comment. This is I don't get a lot of dreams, but it's funny to say this because I did have one recently, and it's always the same story. I'm being pursued. Okay, I don't know what the situation is, but there's usually some people out to get me and out after me. And next thing I know, I'm kind of turning around a corner and it's looking like this, not looking good, right? Like all of a sudden you've turned a corner and you don't see an exit. And you know, and so I'm like, oh, and I'm feeling I'm getting closer and getting closer. And at the last minute, whoosh, I fly away. I'm just able to just barely escape them and just
Take
fly
flight.
away.
Take flight.
And
Interesting.
I've tried to look up, you know, I mean, but you can
Yeah,
find,
you
know,
can.
you
There's a
look up
dream
dreams
dictionary.
and you could find what you wanted it to mean. You know, do you know what I
That's
mean?
true.
I don't know about all that, you know,
That
but
dream dictionary is pretty malleable. You can, like your horoscope, you can form it to your own.
That's it.
Yeah, okay, I
Exactly.
get it.
Yes.
Interesting, though, Superman. So,
Yeah.
how would you describe yourself in 5 words?
Um, passionate. Uh, uh, I don't take a lot of BS. Shoot.
That filled it up. I think that says it all. I really do.
That was
But I
one
also
extra.
saw
I'm
Steve
sorry.
looking at Kay going, my 5 words, I want to buy that Corvette. So
there we
I
are
don't know.
again.
Look,
Buy that Corvette.
just reading their lips. So what advice would you give to your younger self? I've thought about this several times.
Give yourself a break.
Right?
Don't be so tough on yourself. My goodness. Laugh more. Feel lighter. Things
Agreed.
are going to be okay. You know, you're going to be all right. You know, yeah, just so much stress and anxiety that I feel about my youth. It's like
Yeah.
depression and anxiety riddled. You know, I just relax, breathe. How about that one?
Yeah, breathe is good. So, what is the one thing that always makes you laugh no matter how many times you hear it or see it happen?
The funniest thing to me is not a sound, but the funniest thing to me is when you're in the airport and there's that person that's falling asleep and then just waking back
Someone
up.
pops their head
And
back up. It's on every plane.
I will just sit there for about half hour if I have the time and just literally just laugh,
Count.
just sit there and kind of just laugh and chuckle. And sometimes they'll kind of bring up and kind of look around
To see
make
if anyone
sure
was
that
watching.
No one's really watching. And
Okay, you
back to
probably
it,
have
you
laughed
know.
at me on a plane then. Thanks a lot for that,
Me
Pete.
too. I'm the same way, but I love that. That's one of the things that makes me laugh all the time. I'm like,
Yeah, it's
look
entertaining.
at this person. Yeah, there you go.
So, what habits do you think people need to change in order to be happy?
Just
That's super deep.
well, I would just say physical. I think time when you're not attached, time when you're detached from your phone and when you're detached from anything really, and like a simple walk, unplugged time. You know, I think these days, and it seems to me like it's just getting worse and worse and worse as far as how connected we are, and how how expectant people are for your time and your energy and your effort right now. You know, hey, I thought, we were going to do this. It's like, hey, there's a lot going on, so yeah, that'd be what I'd say.
So kind of closing it up, and we'll open it for any questions. What would you like people to know about your book that's most important to you?
That it's not perfect, like the person that wrote it. You know, it's rough. It's not totally PC. It talks about some things that a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about. I happen to, and I wrote it. So, um, I feel like it's just it's a representation of a human life, flawed, and someone that's okay with expressing those flaws to others.
That's a really authentic answer. I thank you for that. I thank you for being authentic during this whole 45 plus minutes. Thank you to Pete. And we will, now they're clapping.
Thank
And
you.
now we will,
I see it. Thank you.
anybody have questions
Thank
for
you.
Pete? Unmute and let's ask Pete some questions. Anyone there? I didn't see, I can't tell. Raise your hand if you have a question. Oh, okay, Steve
good.
and then Michael.
You're making me feel bad for a minute there.
Technology is hard for me to tell. Steve, you have to unmute and then go right ahead,
we
and
go.
then Michael.
Sure.
Oh, Michael, go ahead.
Oh, Michael's
Oh,
unmuted.
Okay. You mentioned you used the GPS on this, and I know from my life that GPSs have only been available for maybe 30 years I think at the most. Was this race done before GPS was available? And if so, how did one navigate?
No, this race that I run, the one on foot, the human powered race, started in 1999.
Oh, okay.
And so it's been recent enough to where GPS. But I will say that not everyone that goes out into the wilderness takes it. You have to understand, one thing I want to tell you is the Iditarod Trail in Alaska is in a lot of ways kind of a super highway through the state. I mean, it's a main trail where communities go between communities, and it's very, usually you can really tell when the trail is you're on it. So you kind of, I definitely don't like to build myself up like we're in map and compass all the time and triangulations and all this. Usually it's pretty straightforward when you're on the trail. I would say probably, but of course, weather can change that, right? And sleep deprivation can change that. And a lot of times there's places where you get to a point where there's two trails that go both ways. And my friend told me that what he did, which made a lot of sense to me, was he thought about himself as almost like a Native American tracker. Like he had to really look at what the footprints were, what type of traffic was going down either, and in our race, we get passed by a lot of bikers. So a lot of times they have these wide bike prints that you see multiple people going down one way. Well, then that's the way for you too, in those situations. And so it can get, but you have map and you do have map and you do have compass, and just as long as your GPS, it might break, that's battery operated, and it could be too cold. Sometimes if it's 60 below, and you have that out, it just freezes on the spot. So that's another thing.
Well, I was assuming there was some kind of solar powered way to recharge the batteries of those
I
things.
thought long and hard, and if I were still doing this race, I would think about strapping something onto my backpack and being able to power things with that. But no, we had like power banks, that we brought with us. So we'd fill those, charge those up at the checkpoints and then bring them out. And if we needed them, then we could plug into those and that sort of thing.
Right.
But as I got further along that trail, if it didn't have to do with food, shelter, or water, I didn't really want anything to do with it by the end of my adventure in Alaska. So,
Steve, your question?
I have a two-part question. So
Sure.
The first part is, what kind of groups do you find yourself speaking to?
I like diversity. I like speaking to different groups. Lately I find I'm speaking to bigger companies, the corporate companies where they pay me to come up and speak to their groups and that. But I love speaking to schools. But I love speaking to diverse groups, because that to me is my favorite thing. I don't like the same thing over and over and over again. And it's really nice to meet other people as well. I have a lot of respect for this country, and all the different people that are here and all the different religions that are here. And so for me, it's like if I can find like a very interesting group, then I'm very interested in doing it. Now I have to say, there were many years where I would speak for free all the time. I would say, oh, if you're interested in doing that. Well, now I have a family. I have 2 daughters. When I leave, and if people want me to, fly and come, that's taking time away from my family. And I can consider myself a professional speaker. So, I've had to learn to say, I need money, or I need, a stipend, or, my days of doing things usually for free are pretty much over at this point, only because I value my time so much. But with that said, I would definitely, if the right group approached me, like for instance, this group and my agent, and I'm not getting paid for this, I'm still here and having a great time. I mean, it's not like the energy I put into things is money oriented. I gave up on that long time ago.
He
So
did.
the
He's
other
doing
part of
this for free.
And the other part of my question, I think you've already answered, which is, what was your reaction when your agent said, well, we have this small group in Yiddish, it's Alpakakers, older people, okay, who would love to hear you speak. Would you, how did you react to that? But before you answer, I will tell you that I totally was enthralled with your presentation. And I backed Joan up in trying to make Maryland a success.
We will do it. We will do it.
Between Steve and I,
it's done.
we got this done.
It's done. I have had, okay, so I love this. Again, this is fun for me. You have to understand, I have an agent, but most of what I've done in my life, I've done on my own. I have found my own paths and my own people to speak to, and so this is awesome. You guys are great. I'm having a wonderful time. And
It's
to
really
me,
awesome.
I have so much respect for the older generation, because you can see that the way I was brought up, all the stories I read were from 100 years ago. They just found Ernest Shackleton's ship yesterday. I mean, that is incredible history. That is, to me, and yet, what's funny? I posted that link on Facebook today, and there's like 10 people that were like, cool, and it's just like, most people are so into, things I'm not. I'm an old soul, and I'm proud of it. And so I've had a great time. And when my agent said that this was available, I said, I'd love to do it.
That is and his agent is local in Washington and is a longtime friend of mine that I met like professionally, because she provided speakers for me in the past. And
Absolutely.
I am so grateful, Pete, because this is, you definitely, she told me what you fetch as a fee. So we are very appreciative that you agreed to do this. So
I'm happy
looking
to do
for
it.
Pete on Facebook so that I can friend you now, Pete, so we can
Please
work
do.
this out. I'm going to friend you, and then we'll
I
get that
love
part
it.
worked out
Let's
too.
go, Joan.
I
I can
see
tell
somebody's-
you're someone I need on my team. We're gonna plan
we
that
need to know
run.
each other and make
There you
things
go.
happen. It's
Done
going to
deal.
happen. Steve's on board. Perhaps every other people here will do it. We're
I
good.
would love
Is
it.
it Marie?
How
Is that
cool
your
is it?
hand up, Marie? To unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question.
Okay. How does your wife feel about you going off on these adventures?
Honestly, you will love this with that question. You will love this answer. When I came back after 2017 and I had quit because, let's see, in 2017, I quit because we dealt with minus 65-degree weather out there on the trail. And I said, no, I think I'm good on this. And I quit. When I came home back to Asheville, I said, I think I'm done. I don't think I have what it takes to get this done. And my wife was the one that said, Pete, you are going back there. She goes, if you don't go back, you are going to be such a miserable old man, because you're going to just sit and think about that opportunity you had to live out your childhood dream. And now you're walking away from it for why? And I was like, oh, I think you're right. I'm going to give it one more try. So and Joan, earlier when you said, like, I went back and winning. No, it wasn't winning. It was this. I had 2 strikes against me. I had quit twice. I needed to go back 3 times, but I said, that's it. I'm going back one more time. And if I fail, I fail. But I'm going to give everything I can to succeeding. And I put a lot of that on my wife for knowing me well enough. But she is an incredible person. In fact, she should be interviewed sometime.
I was just going to say, maybe we need to have her as a speaker.
Yes, that would be awesome. I would just be behind the screen eating popcorn, having a great time. That's a great question, though, Marie. Thank you for that.
Any other questions? If not, Eugene, yes, go ahead.
Yes, I have, sure, okay. With respect to being on the trail, the most important thing is how much in the way of calorie intake you have. And because you're expending a lot of it and chewing it up, shall we say. So what is the type of food that you take with you? It has to be lightweight.
That's another great question. And I will say that when you're on that trail, you are running at a deficit. There is no way that you can eat enough food to keep up with how much movement you're doing out there on the trail. But you're right. What you want to eat is quick food, things that are like, bars and dried fruit and, things that, and sometimes you'd have to thaw them. You'd have to put them inside of your jacket or put them in your pants for a long time, put them in your armpit just to soften them up enough. But you need a lot of candy, a lot of sugar. It's really kind of crappy food because I'm not going to sit there in minus 30-degree weather and just kind of make that real nice meal. Take the time to get my stove out and do all those things. So what I did was I had a rock climbing chalk bag. If anyone knows what those are, that they're the chalk bag that you hang off of a harness. And I put a bunch of snacks in that chalk bag and then hung that on my harness. So anytime I was hungry, I just grabbed something. And after a while, you're just putting food in. You hardly even know what it tastes like. It's just calories. You know that it's calories. And then also my mouth had boils all over it because all the salt and all the crap food. And I mean, you don't take good care of yourself out there. I was a mess. I was an absolute mess out there. And that's, again, why I started at 210 pounds and finished at 169 pounds. I'd hardly knew myself when I looked in the mirror. I mean, it scared me.
Yeah, I'm sure. Wow. Any other questions? Harriet, you're unmuted. Did you want to ask something?
No, I'm good. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Michael, do you have another question?
You're welcome.
Yeah, I want to ask a practical question. Let's face it, could potentially dangerous. If you were to get injured, do you have health insurance? How do you get covered? You got a family to worry about? I mean,
yeah,
I know that's a practical question, but I'm wondering how you do that.
My wife works full time and has great health insurance, and I'm on her plan. Thank you, babe.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I mean, I was so driven by the story, by the romance of the Iditarod since I was a little boy. I mean, I would have freely hurt myself, and if I could have still, I mean, that sounds a little hardcore, but I mean, it was what I was willing to give. But yeah, things can happen. That is for sure out there. There's been people that have lost their hands and feet in races like this one. Yeah, completely frostbit. So
okay,
stakes are high.
So you better thank your wife again. It sounds like
I trust me.
If God forbid something had happened.
All I do all day long.
As you should. I can't believe this hour has flown by.
What a wonderful
You are
time.
an amazing, amazing speaker. I can't thank you enough for not asking for a fee, because then we wouldn't have had this amazing hour together.
Well,
But
I
our
heard.
time-
Let me stop.
We're not
I heard
done
something
because we're going to
about
see
you.
each other.
I heard something about you that you're volunteering some time of your own, right? So that's what you do, right?
Yeah, I'm
in
a firm
certain
believer in
situations,
giving
that's
back.
what you do.
100%.
Not everything needs to be about money.
I agree.
Like this last hour had nothing to do with it. Let's put it that
Right.
way. You're not
It's
getting
true.
paid
If you don't
to
give
host
back-
this. I'm not getting paid to do this, and it's been wonderful.
It really was. I can't thank you enough, Pete.
My
and it's
pleasure.
not over, because we're now planning your Maryland 100-mile.
My Maryland
You got to
100.
figure that out. I
I'm
already
in.
friended you on Facebook.
Wonderful.
So you got to do that, and then we'll email.
I'll talk to
and get
each
this
one
done.
of you. I'll tell you this right now. Mark my words. as long as I'm alive, and I'm going to come up there to Maryland, and I'm going to run my 100-mile race right near y'all, and we'll figure all the logistics. But you guys can help me, and you guys can help
Just map it out, help
you
you
guys
map
can
it.
help there and be there and come visit and walk some with me if you want to, and we'll have a
Now
big
that's
old time.
crazy talk, but the other
We'll have a
part
big
sounded
old
good.
time. Thank you so much for having
Thank
me.
you
I've
so
had
much,
a blast.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you, everyone. We
All
can end
right.
the recording. Melissa, thank you so much. Have a great night. See you at the next culture.